both, John.
You both have, I wouldn't say favorite because that's the incorrect word, but do you have any of the stories or the dictators that you consider the most intriguing or interesting that you've studied? Who would they be for you both?
Well, I mean, the biggest distinction we can probably draw in how a leader would govern that we think really makes our point is to compare Belgium. They had a king who was a very liberal king, but he also owned what is Zaire, the Congo, was his own personal fiefdom. And we just love the contrast between how he ruled. In the Congo, he was a mass murderer millions of people died in the Congo, bringing originally ivory and then rubber out of the Congo just to enrich his pockets. Yet the same man in Belgium was considered to be a very liberal leader who introduced union reforms, social welfare. It's just because the set of incentives he had, the people he had to please in a constitutional monarchy, was he had to please I'm not going to say half, but a significant portion of the Belgian population. In the Congo, he just needed to keep his military policemen happy, or at least a significant fraction of his military policemen. And the people respond to incentives. I don't want to judge anyone for being good or bad. I would much sooner take the most depraved human individual I can think of and make them be my leader under a set of institutions when they're accountable to a large proportion of the population than someone I would consider more saintly and have them be unconstrained. We could sort of look at what happened in Burma. We have our Nobel Prize winning democratic activists who, when she gets political power, what she can turn around, she's committing genocide. She goes from, when she's on the outside, she's campaigning for democracy. As soon as she gets in, and she's not that accountable to that many people, she's into genocide. So I like to think of rules are much more important than personality for me.
George Washington, for me, epitomizes a good leader, if not a great man, because he's flawed, like so many, especially our founding fathers. As slave owners and as perpetuators of human enslavement, it's just this impossible lurch and heartbreak, and I can actually get back to that in a moment. But as a leader in a time, the reason I respect him so much is because he did the thing that is so rare, which is to decline ultimate power and to share the throne before or since. And it is the most remarkable thing about George Washington. If he had been a drunk, which he wasn't. If he had been a bad husband, which he wasn't. If he had been a bad general, which he was not. He was really good at that too. Even if he was bad at all of those things, I would still have said he was the best leader, if only because he demonstrated the seemingly impossible dynamic of a strong, powerful individual, which is to see when it is time to give away that power, to share that power, and then to do it. When the Revolutionary War ended, and we knew right away, because you had mentioned how important it is that we get a common enemy, how important it is that we unite together to fight against a common enemy. And it's true. But then when you get to Mordor, even when Frodo is there with the ring at last, he can't throw it in. There's still, and he doesn't. Keep in mind, Frodo doesn't throw the ring in. He has to be wrestled out of his hands by someone willing to die and go in there with it. I mean, that is how power works, And when the war was over and we realized Britain was no longer the guy to beat, that enemy, we had come together. Unite or die, join or die, don't tread on me. The colonies had come together, stopped their inner fighting to fight the great unified enemy that was Britain, and knew immediately what was going to happen afterwards, which is what always happens afterwards, which is everyone turns at each other and goes, now you're the fucking enemy, I'm in charge. And thus begins the cycle again. And it was absolutely going to happen in America again. Our independence actually wasn't that unique. Scotland had declared independence from England too. And they were just here under the English flag fucking shooting at us because they gave that independence back. Ireland, they give it back. They changed their mind. The corrupt, clan leaders, the corrupt kings, the corrupt leaders within that newly independent place sell it. sell it, give it away, hoard it. And that's how we fall, right? And it was like they knew, they were like, oh, George Washington, we're going to, we're so afraid he's going to become, a king. And so you have to become a king to spare us from that. Please become the king of America, and because everyone loves you, and then you can kick off of the hill of all of these trying to climb up here and take power. Because you have the power, you can knock them all down, and you can preserve our fledgling little nation. And it would have been easy for him to say, okay, that sounds good. You're right. I'm a really decent dude. I don't crave power for myself. But for the sake of America, I will become the king to save us from having a bad king. And he didn't. He didn't. He not only said, I'm not a king. We have to find a new word for it because we don't have kings. 4 years later, he said, I'm out. And they were like, oh, Jesus, fuck, no, we're not ready yet. We have a bunch of and they're up there and they're reaching for your crown. And he's like, I'm not wearing a crown. And they're like, we know, but they're forging one. And they really, if you don't hold the throne, and he said, all right, look, I'll do it again 4 more years. And then you absolutely have to find someone else. He was a fairly young man. He was only like in his 50s at this point. He thought he was near the end of his life because of the age of his father, when his father died and stuff. But he still could have. I mean, look at these we have now. They're all on the edge of life. They still have a hunger to keep their power, you know what I mean? And he insisted, I think that example has lasted just about over 200 years, which again, as a historian, is a blink of an eye. But for over 200 years, people managed to hold the highest seat in our nation with humility, with a understanding that to get that seat, you have to understand it ain't yours. That like our founder, like the first guy, only a reluctant leader can be trusted. Someone who doesn't, who is suspicious of how much power you're trying to give them, who understands that the only person we have to worry about is the one who wants my job, And then for, 50 years, everyone had to nominate. It's why we have to nominate someone, because we don't want you to nominate yourself. You say, I'm running, but you don't nominate yourself. We nominate you. It's always this, And I think without George Washington, the man, our nation would be such a different place and would have fallen into a footnote of an interesting nation, but nothing that really revolutionized, did something truly new on the face of the planet.